You know, life has a way of teaching us lessons at the exact moment we think we're done learning. Most people believe that by the time you reach 65, the storms should calm. But for my old friend Thomas, the biggest storm of his life arrived after his retirement cake had already been cut. Let me tell you his story. Chapter 1. The day everything crumbled. Thomas had worked 42 years at the same manufacturing company in Ohio. He was the kind of man who packed his lunch in the same brown paper bag, wore the same faded baseball cap, and believed that if you saved a little each month, you'd be okay. Retirement was supposed to be simple: a small pension, a modest $401,000, a paid-off house, and mornings spent on his porch with black coffee and the local newspaper. But one April morning, everything changed. He opened his laptop, logged into his investment account, and froze. The numbers didn't make sense. The balance didn't look right. Instead of the comfortable cushion he'd built over 4 decades, his life savings had been reduced to a number so small he thought it was a typo. But it wasn't. A bad financial advisor, a high-risk fund he never understood, a sudden market crash. In a single month, Thomas lost nearly 80% of his retirement savings. He called the company. They gave him apologies, sympathy, a handful of paperwork, but not his money back. He sat at his kitchen table until the sun went down, the house growing darker as the truth settled in. At 65 years old, he couldn't afford to retire anymore.
Chapter 2. Pride is expensive. Now, here's something you learn when you get older: people will forgive you for anything except asking for help. And Thomas knew that too well. He had 2 kids, Emily, a nurse in Florida, and Brandon, a mechanic 2 towns over. Both loved him dearly. Both would have helped in a heartbeat, but Thomas couldn't do it. He'd always been the provider, the one who fixed broken fences and flat tires, the one who paid for school clothes, college tuition, and first cars. How could he look his children in the eyes and tell them that all the money he worked for his entire life was gone? So he didn't. Instead, he quietly returned to work. But no company wanted to hire a 65-year-old man with a bad knee and sore wrists. Not full-time, anyway. So he took part-time jobs here and there, stocking shelves at a grocery store, helping at a hardware shop, delivering packages during the holiday rush. The money helped, but it wasn't enough. Every bill became heavier. Every month became a hill he had to climb. And every night he sat alone in his dark living room, wondering how he could start over at an age when most people slow down. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Lifeline. One cold November evening, Thomas was working the late shift at the grocery store. His joints were aching, and he was moving slower than usual. A young cashier named Daniel noticed. "Hey, Mr. T," he said, "why don't you take your break? I can handle this." Thomas shook his head. "I'm all right, son. Just a long day." But Daniel wasn't convinced. Over the next few weeks, the boy kept an eye on him, offering to help lift boxes, bringing him hot coffee when the store was quiet, asking him about his life. And one evening, Thomas finally opened up just a little. He didn't tell Daniel everything, but he mentioned that retirement wasn't going as planned. Now, Daniel didn't say much at the time, just nodded, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "You deserve a break, Mr. T. You've done enough for the world." Thomas smiled politely, but inside he felt the familiar sting of failure. A week later, Daniel asked him to stop by the staff room before he left. When Thomas walked in, the young man handed him a worn notebook. "I don't know your full story," Daniel said, "but I think you should read this." Inside were business ideas, simple ones, small ones, things Thomas could do with the skills he already had. But the last page, that's what hit him hardest. It said, "You spent your whole life working for other people. Maybe it's time to work for yourself." Thomas sat down. His hands were shaking a little. No one had ever told him that before. Chapter 4. The Second Beginning. Thomas took Daniel's words home with him, reading the notebook every night for a week. Finally, one idea caught his attention: handyman for seniors, affordable home repairs for people who don't trust big companies. Thomas chuckled softly. He'd spent his entire life fixing things: leaky faucets, broken doors, loose shelves. It came naturally to him. So he did something bold, something completely unlike him. He took $400, almost all the extra money he had, and printed flyers. Simple ones. Black and white. Honest. Local handyman. Specializing in helping seniors. Fair prices. Trustworthy work. Call Thomas. He put them up in libraries, community centers, diners, churches, anywhere people over 60 might go. At first, nothing happened. Then, after 5 days, his phone rang. It was a woman named Linda. She needed help fixing a broken porch railing. Thomas did the job so well that she told her friends at church, and they told their friends. Within 3 months, he had more work than he could handle. He didn't charge much, just enough to get by. But the customers adored him, and word spread. Before long, he had an entire list of regular clients. Mostly seniors, widows, retirees, people who needed someone honest and gentle to rely on. Thomas wasn't rich, not even close, but he was stable. He was respected. He was needed again. And for the first time since losing everything, he felt useful. Chapter 5. The truth comes out. One evening, after finishing a job, Thomas received a call from his daughter Emily. "Dad, Brandon told me you've been working odd jobs. What's going on?" His shoulders sank. His secret was out. Emily continued, "Dad, why didn't you tell us? We thought you were enjoying retirement." Thomas took a deep breath, and he told her the truth. Everything. The lost savings, the jobs, the struggle, the shame. Emily cried. Not because he lost money, but because he carried the burden alone. "Dad," she whispered, "family isn't just for the good parts. We share the hard parts too." The next week, both of his children visited him. They hugged him, reassured him, told him they didn't care about the money, they cared about him. Thomas didn't disappear into their finances or ask for handouts. They didn't want that anyway. But they insisted on helping in the ways that mattered. Emily set up a proper savings plan for him. Brandon helped fix his truck so he could drive safely. They both supported his handyman business, telling everyone they knew. Turns out, the thing Thomas feared most, being seen as weak, was the thing that brought his family closer than they had been in years. Chapter 6. The Gentle Lesson. Now here's the part of the story I want you to hear clearly. Thomas didn't get back the money he lost. He didn't become wealthy. He didn't retire on a beach. But he rebuilt something more important. His life, his dignity, his sense of purpose. At 65, he thought his story was done. But life said, not yet. And by the time he turned 70, he had a small, steady business, a modest savings account, and children who visited more often than ever. He wasn't the man who lost everything. He was the man who started again. And here's the lesson he left me with. It's never too late to rebuild your life. You only lose everything when you stop trying. So whether you're 40, 60, or 80, if life knocks you down, remember Thomas. Your story isn't finished yet, not as long as you keep turning the pages.